Hello, and welcome to episode number 254 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me this week, I have Pat Evans, I have Sam McQuillan, two of them for the price of one here, which is absolutely free. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We do appreciate your support here on all of this. Before we get going, guys, I think we all just tip of the cap to Adam Candy, everything that he has done for the site, for this podcast, for everything. Pat, of course, Sam, both of you guys working intimately with him for a while now. So just wanted to say what an integral part he was to get this thing to 254 episodes.
Yeah, Adam was just absolutely crucial to what Legal Sports Report was and continues to be to this day. He's probably one of the best, if not the best editor I've ever had, and just incredible person and great for this brand.
Yeah, Adam was the guy who hired us both and pretty much showed us the ropes of the sports betting industry. And he was instrumental. I got to echo Pat's sentiment about building the brand and really helping LSR kind of become, in my opinion, the preeminent outlet reporting on the sports betting industry and the iGaming industry. So, yeah, I really appreciate everything he did for us. And hopefully we can keep paving it forward for him without him. So.
Big shoes to fill for sure, and we will endeavor to keep this podcast, along the same track, that we have been doing it for 253 episodes prior to this one. So the faces will change. We'll have a rotating cast here of all of the different writers and all the different contributors to LSR, but it will stay in the same way that you have grown accustomed over 253 episodes here. We will do a state roundup like we have done in the past. We'll talk some interesting stuff going on with a Morgan Stanley survey. I think you might find interesting out there that we have on there. Some stuff going on with Chumba and Lucky Land and all of that too. But Sam, let's kick things off here with the story that you have over at LSR about Jason Robinson. Him kind of saying that, yeah, sure, we're the big guys and FanDuel's the big guys, but that doesn't mean that the small guys can't survive.
Yeah, Matt, I sense by your tone that you're kind of getting at him making a smart, calculated kind of decision here to say, hey, it's not only going to be us at the top. We don't want people to get concerned about this growing duopoly that DraftKings and FanDuel have created, 77% of the market. There's plenty of room as long as you do it at a very, very small scale that doesn't threaten our business. You can survive. There's room for tier 2 operators. So yeah, he made these comments at this investor conference this past week, the Craig Hallam online gaming conference, essentially laying out sort of the blueprint he sees for these other operators to participate and survive. He said, we've kind of proven, and he's right, that you can't go out there and just grab market share and pump out promos. It's something that gets talked about a lot in this podcast. And he's saying, the market share goals are not realistic for these other companies, which it seems like the investment community is finally kind of coming around on that. Penn and ESPN Bet, when they relaunched this past year, they were kind of the example of that. They pumped out promos and promos and promos at a time when nobody else was doing it. I think they got about, almost double-digit percent of the market at the time, but now they're down to 3 and 4%, depending on what state you look at. They do have kind of a market share goal of 20% by 2027. But Robin's kind of saying, that's not really a realistic strategy. If these companies want to keep existing, they have to do it at a smaller scale, which goes to building out the product. We talk about parlays all the time. Robbins was saying, we've done that. We've showed that that's the way to do it. And you've seen these other companies, like BetMGM buying Angstrom Sports. They're starting to make some gains because their parlay product is getting better, but it takes a lot of time and money. And the other part of it is kind of, how much time and money can we keep spending before we go out of business or before our investors don't want to give us any more.
Right. And Pat, that's kind of the big question in this, right? Is always going to be is the juice worth the squeeze? And it is you hear them say it all the time, but it's just truth. It's not a huge margin business, the sports betting business. So it's like, it's if you have to sit there and fight to get 2% share or 3% share or something, like at some point you just go like, all right, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to 2021 when I started at LSR, and I was just really fully getting my head around it, and I think a lot of people still were at that time of what this market was and is going to be. I mean, I remember the market share discussions back then, but I remember I asked Adam at the time, I was like, what is this industry going to be like? Like, what? And he said, and I don't know if it was an original thought, I'm sure it was, but maybe other people have thought it this way too, but the airlines, there's a couple major, huge players, and there's a lot of little niche operators that are able to carve out little spots. And I think maybe that's what Robin's alluding to a little bit. But I've always kept that in the back of my mind whenever I think about market share and kind of the players of the industry.
Yeah,
Who wants to be the spirit of sports betting?
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, it's like, I'm the, whatever the discount airline is of choice, the sports betting.
Can we pour one out for Maxim Bet while we're at it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
all these other ones that are, come and gone and whatnot. So, it'll be interesting. I hear what he's saying. I just do wonder, Sam, you put it how I would say it. It's like, okay, it costs a lot of money to like be the tiny little sliver on the pie chart. And it's like, do you really spend all that money to be that tiny little sliver on the pie chart? And I just don't know how many people are willing to go that route in all of this. Another article you can find over on LegalSportsReport.com. We've talked a ton just about the varying forms of gambling that are out there. Sure, we talk a ton about DraftKings and FanDuel and all the different big guys and stuff, but we've talked more and more about the sweep stuff. We talk more and more about the pick'em game. We talk more and more about all of that. And so there is a story out there on LSR right now where there's a lawsuit heading towards the guys behind Chumba and Lucky Land.
Yeah, Matt Waters did a great job covering this for us. Lawsuits are candidly not our forte between me and Pat, so he does a great job kind of cutting through all the jargon. Essentially, it's this company VGW, which, like you said, Matt, operates all these sweepstakes casino style brands. These are websites that you can play for free, but also you can somehow also spend and win money. It's a sweepstakes. They use the sweepstakes law as sort of a de facto loophole, depending on how you want to spin it, to offer a product very similar to online casino, offer a product very similar to online sports betting in a lot of states without, paying the same taxes and fees and all that fun stuff that, like we said, makes the being in the sports betting business or the iGaming business so hard to begin with. But this is the first of its kind we've seen in terms of a class action lawsuit that seeks to get millions in damages from this company, and not only VGW and its brands, but also Google and Apple for what the lawsuit alleges, facilitating payments to this operator and to these gaming sites, filed in Manhattan court this past week. New York, obviously, if you know anything about the online sports betting industry, is pretty gung-ho in terms of getting all the money they can, we can put it that way, out from operators and cracking down on what they think are illegal operations. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes from here. The fact that Google and Apple are involved, that's good for headlines. We'll see how realistic that ultimately is. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about this again soon.
Yeah, Patty, there will be lawyers, as they say. This is going to be litigated like to hell and back, when it's all said and done. And kind of that's how I've sat with just the sweep stuff in general. For me, is like, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to sit on the sideline here. Sure, I can have my opinions, so at the end of the day, don't matter because I'm not the person who will ultimately make the decision on whether this stuff gets to succeed or not. So I'm like, look, there's going to be tons of lawsuits. There's going to be a ton of litigation. This will eventually be decided in court all over the place. And so that's just kind of where I'm at with it. Again, I can have my own personal opinions on all that stuff, but it doesn't really matter. Someone will tell me whether it is legal or not,
Exactly. There will be lawyers involved, but it's not us. I mean, they found a loophole and they're working it. And until you close that loophole, I feel like that's okay, and that's something you saw a lot with the DFS 2.0 stuff. And, they got regulators looking into them and legislators looking into them, and they shut down in those states that they've been told to. And now we're being told that there's going to be a big wave of legislation this year to try to legalize DFS 2.0 as a true industry. So you have to imagine something like that might eventually happen here with sweepstakes stuff as well.
If you've been around the LSR pod for a while, you remember whenever there was just a ton of state updates every single week. So we would just have a dedicated section. Then it kind of slowed down. Everyone started legalizing. We didn't need all of these updates. Well, you know what? We took a little bit of a hiatus here. And so there's been some stuff happen in a bunch of states out there. So we'll hit on Missouri. We'll hit on stuff that went on in Arizona, what's going on in Minnesota, Georgia. But Pat, kick us off here on the latest stuff in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, Texas, everybody's looking at, right? I mean, especially now that the launches have kind of dried up. I mean, it's going to be huge. A recent report came out that suggests it will be the largest state per handle state when it does eventually mature as a sports betting state, which is crazy. I mean, and yeah, I mean, the legislator only meets every other year, an odd year, so they're going to be starting in January and talking about it, and it's starting to heat up a lot. Now, the issue is it remains as the same as 2023 when a bill passed the House, but then ran into Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who is a staunch anti-gambling platform person, says there's no way it's getting through the Senate, and it doesn't look like it's going to change this year or next year. So that is to be seen. So the industry doesn't seem too excited about it, but definitely a big conversation, a lot of people to be moved. Miriam Adelson, who of course took the majority stake of the Dallas Mavericks, has been donating a lot of money to political action campaigns to kind of try to influence politicians because she, of course, wants gambling in Texas for business reasons.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, there was a report today that GeoComply tracked, 1.48 million attempts in November to access legal sports books. GeoComply, of course, blocked those. But, I mean, that was an 87% increase from last November. So, I mean, people are getting excited about it in Texas, and you have to imagine legislators will at least somewhat, at some point, begin listening to their constituents.
Yeah, Sam, it's one of those things where you look at the voices there in Texas, and it's not only Adelson, but we, at times have heard from Mark Cuban. We've heard from Tillman Fertitta. We've heard from Jerry Jones. We've heard like all these billionaires, that are like making it known that this is something that they would like in the state that they call home and that they have spent a ton of money in and all of that. So I know it is a long shot, but I do wonder at some point when all of these people with all of this power and influence and money don't somehow figure out a way to win.
Yeah, money talks, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants a piece of the sports betting pie. I'm reminded of, one of my favorite shows, Succession. I think the last season they mention as a big tech acquisition purpose as, oh, this will be our key to unlock sports betting and getting on sports betting. That's kind of what everyone's viewed sports betting as ever since the fall of PASPA is like, okay, how do we benefit from it, right? Mm-hmm. You saw it with the leagues were like, oh, it's going to ruin our sport. And then once they're like, wait, it's going to make us a lot of money. Let's do it. And then the players were like, oh, I don't want to be bet on. Oh, wait, we're going to get half the revenue. Yeah, let's do it. Mark Cuban got rid of his majority. He loves the Mavericks. I mean, he's sitting at every courtside game. He was actually one of the good owners who like controlled basketball as far as getting involved in operation. He got rid of his majority stake in the company, I think, because he wants to do gambling. We've seen Tillman Fertitta, the Rockets owner, like you alluded to, Matt, sell Golden Nugget to DraftKings. Everyone wants a piece of it. So many rich, people in Texas in general. I'm just really thankful we have Pat who can cover all this really nuanced stuff because, oh my God, it's so convoluted. The Texas legislature meets once every other year, and there's implications if somebody gets appointed to the Trump cabinet and people get rid of different stakes and, the people are trying to do it. They see these commercials there all the time thinking, why don't I have sports betting? Yeah, I mean, Texas is a huge market. It's going to be, eventually, and I think they're trying to get towards the finish line right now. But yeah, it's been crazy there, man.
Another big, obviously sports heavy state, Pat, is Georgia. What are we getting? Some word coming out of there that they also might want to do this.
Yeah, Georgia's been one of those states that the last couple of years it's been like they can do it. They need to do it. It was like they get to the finish line and then something falls apart, basically. And the last couple of years, and it hasn't been told to me that it's different yet, is there's a big split between people who don't think there needs to be a constitutional amendment and those who do. And for some reason, that's a big block. And a legislator who has been a sponsor in the past wrote an op-ed this week and basically said the swing voters who swung Georgia from Biden in 2020 to Trump this year want sports betting. And so I think that's kind of a call because, sports betting at this level is bipartisan. And there's, some people on both sides who want it, some people who don't want it on both sides. And that's, I think, a call to kind of bring all the Republicans together in that state to say, hey, let's get on the same page and do it. because our voters want it. And that, I think, was kind of an interesting op-ed piece to read and kind of see that full call to action in Georgia.
Sam, I mean, obviously you're looking at a state like Georgia, massive sports, specifically college sports, like just huge fan base there for Georgia, even Georgia Tech, all of that. And you have like the most iconic golf tournament in the world happens there. You can't bet on that. You've got all these other things. It's like, all your neighbors all have it. Everyone's wondering like, why in the hell can't we do it as well? A state like Georgia, if Texas is a long shot, I'm going to say like a state like Georgia comes to its senses this year.
Yeah, I would think so. I got to echo what Pat says. I remember we were at a gaming conference last year or 2 years ago, and the legislators were kind of saying, while we really want iGaming, what we think is kind of a more doable push is to get Georgia. It didn't end up happening last year. And to the point of how nuanced and crazy all this stuff is, we just talked about all the reasons it hasn't happened in Texas. Georgia seems to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but a completely different ballgame where it's not even do we want sports betting? It's like, okay, we've decided that it seems like most of the people want it. Oh, but we have this huge disagreement over what needs to be done in order for it to happen. It's like, if that's the issue that's holding it up, or if it gets used as a bargaining chip in some other sort of Georgia political argument that I'm not privy to because I don't live down there, that would be crazy to me. And I have to wonder, too, at what point does it become a partisan issue? Because I don't think we've seen many issues that start off bipartisan really stay that way. Like, I remember when COVID was happening, I was thinking, oh, maybe this would be a good opportunity for everyone to kind of unite and work together. That didn't last, obviously. So is sports betting next? We'll have to see. Maybe Georgia will be kind of a test case there.
Pat, let's combine a couple of states here. What's happening in Minnesota and Missouri?
Yeah, well, Minnesota, talk about nuances. We're going to have more bills this year. Same situation as Georgia, where it was like the past 3 years has been, Minnesota can do it. They're going to do it. And then things fall apart. And there it's a tribal versus horse racing track thing where there's disagreements, which, of course, is a Democrat with the tribes and the Republicans are with the horse racing tracks. And again, there's people on both sides who want it and don't want it. And that's where we're coming to. I've talked to a couple opponents in the legislature who've told me, people said it was on the goal line last year and they just ran out of time. One specifically, she told me, there's no way, there's too many opponents in here and it's not going to work. But there's now a bill that was just introduced by one of the opponents who always introduces kind of poison pill amendments, which basically kill the bill. And he's got a lot of responsible gambling things in there. It's all responsible gambling focused, which is a good thing,
sure,
of course. But again, some of them are very, the industry is very against. So I think that might be a discussion starter for those types of opponents of saying, okay, we understand this will get it into the light. We understand it can be a tax generator and help. So let's start something. So I think that's where we're standing in Minnesota. It's going to be, a very nuanced discussion this year as it has been the last 3 years. In Missouri, this was a crazy election year for them. They had the ballot campaign that ended up winning by fewer than 4,000 votes. And until for the last month since the election, we thought there was a possibility of a call for a recount. But it was certified yesterday. It is good to go. The Missouri Gaming Commission is saying they'll launch by late spring, early summer in Missouri. So Missourians will finally get sports betting after, again, a couple close years in their world too, because, again, the nuances there legislatively finally pushed it to the sports team saying, no, we're going to do this by public vote.
To put a bow here on the state news, Arizona does become the 16th state plus Washington, D.C. to kick Bovada out of town. Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and West Virginia all say no thanks to Bovada. Imagine that we'll be continually adding states to that list as well. Cool article over at Legal Sports Report that we're going to leave you guys with and have a little bit of a discussion. But Morgan Stanley did a sports betting survey, and Sam, just kind of start with you on some of the takeaways that you saw from this. I was reading through it. I was like, look, at the end of the day, this is kind of interesting. It's just an interesting little deal.
Yeah, definitely. I think You're right, Matt, that it's not anything groundbreaking,
Yeah.
but I think it's really more important that it actually gives us numbers and context behind a lot of the things we talk about all the time, right? Like DraftKings and FanDuel are the most popular apps. Okay, we know that, but now the survey says, quantifies how popular they are. And it told us, too, why people are saying they're popular. I think it's really interesting to dig into the why of this. And Morgan Stanley, obviously, like a very, accredited place. So anytime they put something out, I'm going to really try to dive in. 2 years ago when they did this survey, most people said the most important factor in determining their sports betting app of choice was bonuses, promotions, who has boosts. Now it's all about ease of use, and bonuses and promos aren't as important anymore. And, if we kind of just look at the landscape from a macro level, yeah, we've seen that, Caesars isn't giving out $3,000 in literal cash in New York anymore. Really, the only operator who's really had been pumping out a lot of promos was ESPN Bet and was Fanatics, because they were the new ones last year. And like we talked about earlier, they lost market share. It's not a sustainable model. Some other really interesting nuggets, like we know that younger demographics are kind of who essentially these companies want to go after. People obviously old enough to bet legally in these states, but 21 to 34, 60% of those people said that parlays are their favorite kind of bets, which, no surprise there, but the younger people are betting parlays more. They're more profitable. Some other interesting nuggets, we can talk about this all day, but women made up about 32% of bettors, which I think got some kind of pushback online. A lot of people saying, that's just beards, or, guys betting on their girlfriends' accounts or wives' accounts or whatever. But it's important to note that this was a survey that literally asked people, like asked actual women, hey, do you bet? Not compiling their accounts. So that data to me is real and substantial. It's a little bit down from the past couple of years, but since 2020, it's up like triple. Also noting that women tend to bet about $3 more on average for their bet size than men. Just thought that was an interesting nugget. Could be because it's a smaller demographic. Obviously, older people are less profitable. But the credit to the older folks, the folks over 65, they bet parlays less. So maybe they're actually smarter than the average bettor, or actually just don't know how to. I cannot imagine my mom or dad trying to figure out how to add a leg to another app, regardless of the technology that they've added. But yeah, some really interesting trends here. Newer states that launched sports betting more recently, parlays are more popular in those states. And why is that? Maybe because when they launched, the sports books are now pushing parlays at launch, as opposed to a state like New Jersey, where they really weren't pushing, same game parlays and SGPs back in the dark days of legal sports betting. So yeah, it's a really interesting survey. I would urge you to check out the rest. I can't do it justice to talking about it here.
Pat, one of the things that happened as the surge of the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world was going on is, like, you had the experienced bettors who wanted to come out and all they wanted to do was talk trash about the parlays, and specifically same game parlays and all the different things like that. And, it's like, how can they do this? How you do this? And now we have data, and really all this was these sports books providing what the bettors want to bet. And like I was saying this all along, I have a small sample size of people that is kind of like my own little focus group. I'm originally from Louisiana. All my friends back in Louisiana got sports betting throughout the course of this podcast's existence, and so I'm asking them every time they put something in the group chat, what do you think it is? Like, I mean, they're not putting in the grinding out 110s, right? Like they're showing their 5-game they're showing their 5-game parlay or their 7-game same game parlay or whatever. So, like, I understand we always need to preach responsible gaming and all that, and let people know that, yes, these are lower percentage bets, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, at this point, the data it's overwhelming. This is just how people want to bet. They want to turn a little into a lot.
It's as you guys always talk about in the past, it's a lottery ticket to them, and I've got the same sample sizes that you do here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where, after our softball games on Thursdays in the summer, we go and, there's all the baseball games on, and my friends are all like tailing each other on 6-leg parlays, right. And I'm just like, all right, guys, you do you. It's fine, but they're just looking for some engagement and the potential to make a lot of money, whether or not they actually do. But then on the flip side, I mean, like my brother-in-law, he decided that instead of that, he's going to just bet interception every drive of a football game and just hope that one hits. And that's what he's doing now. So,
Right.
you know, find the way you enjoy it. If it makes you enjoy a game a little bit more and you do want a little bit of money, and of course, responsibly. But yeah, it's an interesting world out there for the people who have found different fun ways to bet.
Yeah,
I think people know it now too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
we've been talking about it forever. Like you've been talking about it forever on this podcast. The companies have been putting out this data. Hey, parlays are really profitable for sportsbooks. There's a reason they're making a profit now. People online, you know, it's kind of an echo chamber. Like, oh, parlays are bad. Everyone kind of knows that now. But to your point, Matt, people still like betting it. I think they don't care.
It is, and I have said this, and I will never say it again to the group of guys. Like when they come in and they do the whole deal of, man, first six were there, and that damn seventh leg or whatever, you know. And I for the longest time, they're going, guys, yeah, it's very hard to hit 7 bets. I mean, that's whatever. But Sam, that's their response. It's like, I don't care. Like you know, it's like the excitement, the fun, the sweat that they get from it. Yeah, and so with all that, it's hard for me to argue with it too. If you go to the movies, like your chance of ROI is 0. You just enjoy the experience of going to the movies, right? I mean, like you paid your money and you got enjoyment and you leave. Your chance of ROI is nothing. Like this is just kind of like going to the movies with a chance of ROI, you know, like, so it's like, that's,
and these companies want to be known as entertainment companies. They don't want to be known as gambling companies. And this is the way they're doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely. As you said, guys, the survey, all the article and everything in the is take into the consumption. Like nothing's groundbreaking here for sure, but it's certainly something that's just quite interesting. So that's over at Legal Sports Report as well. Again, guys, episode number 254, kind of turning a new leaf here, and hope you do enjoy the content here. Be a rotating cast coming in with all of the brightest minds, again, in the gaming industry that you do find over at LegalSportsReport.com. Everything we talked about here on the podcast, you can find in written form over there on LSR. So please go in, click on those articles, and read all the words that these guys and everyone else is putting onto the site. They're reading all of the stuff. They're watching all the stuff. They're listening to all the stuff, so you don't have to. That is exactly what Legal Sports Report is all about. For Sam, for Pat, I am Matt. Talk to you guys next week.